Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Little not safe for work. Let's do it. What's the most effed up thing you've seen a person do? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. A guy I worked with was about to take his wife on a trip back to their mutual hometown in another state. They had a pair of delightful kittens, and they asked me if I would watch them while they were gone. I had little experience with cats, but these two were just wonderfully playful. I gave him a call when he got back to arrange returning the kittens, but he said they had picked up a non-cat friendly dog on the journey, and he would just drop off the kittens in the woods. Needless to say, I kept them, and they are wonderfully furry friends for me and eventually to my wife and kids. I still think what would have happened to them if I had not been in the right place at the right time. I bought a bunch of Legos and set up a whole section in my garage for his kid to play while we hung out. I even built a bunch of small model things for the intention of him disassembling them and being, a child. Dude made his child cry for taking apart one of the parts. The little dude was terrified to touch the Legos after that and wouldn't listen to me when I told him that's the point. I didn't want to step in and tell someone how to raise your kids, but when I literally buy shit for him to play with and destroy, don't get mad at him for playing with them and destroying them. Destroy as in break the little models I made. Edit. Please don't read too much into this. This was one incident in over a decade-long friendship. He's a great single father who has more struggles than most people I know. For example, I have my first child coming in 4 weeks, and he's been over every week helping paint and get the house fixed up. Some of you have said things that upset me because I care about these people. Sorry, you may cut people out after one disagreement, but that's not me. People aren't perfect. People make mistakes. It's about learning from them. It was really effed up in the moment, but instead of kicking him out and cutting contact, we talked about why it happened and why he felt the need, and I feel he's a better father after the discussion. We can all only improve one step at a time. I didn't step in at the moment because I was surprised, but we've since squashed that and moved past it. His son just always asks to break them now, which is funny. Deliberately get knocked down by a car in order to prove that when drunk, and we were very drunk, his bones were flexible. Fortunately, the car had been slowing to turn. There followed a couple of minutes trying to reassure the driver he was okay, whilst calling him an idiot. Meanwhile, he was laying flat on his back, maintaining he'd proved his point. Brought my friend to watch my boyfriend practice his drumming. She kept spreading her legs wide, wearing a skirt with no underwear. Whoa. She slept with him, and he left me, thinking he would be with her. Needless to say, she didn't date him because she already had a boyfriend. Nice. There's a phrase for this one, thanks to the internet. I can say it. She for the streets. Girl, bye. Best friend was excited to meet his new girlfriend. The whole evening, he bragged about how she was still married and he was going to be the reason she got divorced. Haven't spoken to him since. Did hear she broke up with him and sorted out the issues with her husband. We were working in an old lady's attic, and he kicked the shit out of a pipe on purpose that went and told her it needed to be replaced. I never worked with him again after that. Convinced his girlfriend she was suffering from gluten intolerance instead of schizophrenia, and got her to stop taking medication. Back in high school, leaving a kegger party with a friend, there was a cat crossing the street, and he sped up and ran it over. I lost it and insisted he pull over so I could check out the cat. It managed to get itself to the side of the road, but died shortly thereafter. Told my friend to go on. I would walk home. That was the end of our friendship. Good. Was out for the night with two of my friends, and we were all crashing at one of their parents' house that night. Get drunk, head home, and decide to grab some snacks from the kitchen before hitting the sack. Out of nowhere, my friend gets a watermelon out of the fridge and dares my other friend to F it. We're teenage lads at this point, so we all find this hilarious, especially when my friend actually does put his dick in the thing. But that's not the effed up bit. My friend, whose house it was, then takes the effed watermelon, screams, "Yeah!" and starts to eat where it had been effed. He then threw it full force into the wall and went to bed. Needless to say, me and the watermelon effer went to bed that night feeling a bit weird about the dick melon munching friend. Never stay there again. When I was a kid, I found a baby bat that seemed injured, so I made a home for it in an old coffee can to get better. I went inside to eat lunch. After eating, I went to check on my new friend, and it was nowhere to be found. Neither was my brother or neighbor, best friend at the time. I eventually found them on a trail by my house, laughing hysterically. They were laughing at the bat that they had just dismembered. Still think about that often, and it's been 21 years or so. Edit. Thanks for all the words. So a little more backstory on them. My brother was always abusive toward animals and other kids in the neighborhood and at school, not to mention home. He suffered a lot of mental health issues, and for some reason I try to use that to justify his actions, but truthfully, I know he was just a dick. It was quite difficult growing up with him. A couple of years ago, he made an executive decision to leave this life. Even with all the bad shit that happened, it still messed me up a bit. I definitely do not think of him as a good person, but there were some good in there somewhere. My neighbor was similar, but more mean towards people, and when they were together, they created a shitty duo. He also ended up taking his own life. It can't be easy holding on to so much hate. I went on holiday for a week and asked my best friend to pop in and feed my cat. He lived a few doors away. When I got back, my cat was laying by the back door of my house. Went inside and his bowl was empty. I called him and asked when the last time he fed him, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I forgot." My cat had been outside for a week with no food or water. I haven't spoken to him in 12 years. Inexcusable. I mean, it goes without saying. All the other stuff we've read today is terrible, but if you agree to do something that involves the well-being of an animal, person, follow through. Or just say, no, I can't. Simple. Bye. Okay. My best friend had just broken up with my brother, who had moved over 1,000 miles and changed jobs to be with her, citing personal differences. My brother was devastated, but I tried to respect her decision and be a source of support for both of them, especially because they truly weren't the best fit. But then she shared with me, because she knew that I loved her and would be happy for her so long as she was happy, that she'd been cheating on my brother for the past month and had found her soulmate. The depth of my brother's heartbreak, already immense, was further compounded by the infidelity. To my bewilderment, she truly couldn't understand why I was ending the friendship. It seemed so distraught that I would end a years-long friendship over something so small, and I still can't comprehend why she thought telling me would result in anything other than a complete door slam. Hannah, you still suck, and I'm still angry. Stabbed a rival in the neck with a rusty pair of scissors during a fight that broke out on the street in front of a house party. We no longer kicked it after that. Miraculously, the recipient of said stabbing was okay after numerous stitches and tetanus shots. A friend of a friend, and this is a reason I stopped associating with both of them. The friend of my friend had just purchased a new Egyptian cotton sheets, and his wife's cat had apparently got sick and threw up and shit on them. He grabbed the cat, slammed it into the wall, grabbed a lighter, and started to burn the cat's face off. Whoa. It took me a little bit to process what the F was happening and try to stop it, but the poor cat had damage done, lost an eye and whiskers on its left side. When I could get him to finally let go of the cat, I took it to the emergency vet, told the vet the story of what happened. The cat was already on file for other incidents of injury, sadly, and they notified the wife. I don't really know what else came of that as I left. I recommended she think about divorce and blocked both of them on all methods of communication. It sucked because the dude who burnt the cat was in a really good band that we would see live quite frequently. So that kind of stopped some of my social outings for a bit, but I wasn't willing to be around psychopaths like that. Had a friend who had a 9mm handgun who liked to put a replica bullet into it and pretend he was going to shoot people at his house. He'd even go as far as squeezing the trigger to really scare the F out of people. One night, he was drunk as hell, oh boy, and decided to pull this trick on a friend of his roommates who'd never been to the house before. Well, that night, the idiot accidentally put a live round into the chamber and fired. The bullet missed the girl's head by effing inches. He begged us not to call the police. We called the police. Had a female friend who set me up with a friend of hers. We texted for a month or so with said friend, only to find out it was my friend, or who I thought was my friend, catfishing me. Why she did this was beyond me. I didn't think it was funny, obviously, but it effed with my head a great deal. And when me and my other friends called her out on it, with more than enough evidence to prove that she did it, she still denied it. I couldn't talk or wanted to talk to a woman for about a year or so. I was so effed up from it. Come on. So I had this roommate in college. He wasn't the most popular among my friends, but he honestly wasn't a bad guy at all. Maybe a little smug, but honestly, that's not all unusual for people that age. I certainly wasn't any better. And he grew out of it later. But he just kept getting pink eye, and neither he nor I knew why. So anyway, we were hanging out in the dorm room with two of our friends from high school when he, my roommate, stepped out to go to class. As soon as he was out the door, friend one jumped up, dropped his pants and underwear, and effing crop dusted my roommate's pillow. Apparently, he'd been sneaking in and doing this regularly for weeks, but this time decided to let me and friend two in on the secret, and additionally, just sharded all over the pillow. Ugh. Visible flecks of shit all over it and the bed. Friend 2 and I did not think it was nearly as entertaining as friend 1 did, and immediately informed my roommate. Apparently, friend 1 had also been pissing in people's soda bottles. We dropped him from the group pretty thoroughly after all that. A girl was falling down drunk, totally out of it, no drink spiked. She had been doing a crazy amount of shots without knowing they were double shots. This one friend of mine insisted on taking her home by himself. Me and 3 other people in the group insisted more strongly to come along and help her home. The whole way back, he kept trying to assure us that he had things under control and didn't need our help. And it became clearer and clearer he was planning on R-ing her. We aggressively told him to knock it off and got her home. First, he tried to insist he should stay with her to make sure she's okay, which we vetoed. Then we caught him trying to get her keys out of her purse so he could come back inside. What then happened? We'd had enough, and things got rough. We didn't beat him up, but we forcefully got him out of her student resident building. She was in bad shape, so we found a friend of hers from down the hall who agreed to come over and look after her. We were worried she might throw up in her sleep or something. Later on that night, he got caught pounding on her dorm room door by the same friend after he managed to sneak back into the building by following someone else when they came in. The whole friend group split up over staying friends with him, but F that guy. She was literally passed out on her feet and totally incoherent. I once saw an ex-friend of mine kick her boyfriend so hard in his ribs that afterward he peed blood. He was lying on his back at the time. His transgression? He asked her son not to eat all the chocolate pieces out of the communal trail mix they had. He has since dumped her. Now she's homeless, addicted to drugs, in and out of jail, and even her family won't have anything to do with her. He had me help model for one of his photo shoots that was set on top of a very tall building. When he asked me to move to the edge, he kept talking about how cool it would be to capture someone's death from a building in real time. At this point, I was getting somewhat nervous. Then he gave me a little shove. I backed away and then almost slipped. His response, "See? That could have been so cool. You have mental health issues anyway. Why don't you just do it? You'll be posthumously famous, which will give your life meaning." Now keep in mind, this is paraphrased since it's been a long time ago, but that was the gist of it, and I've never forgotten how it made me feel. After that, I started to gradually cut this person from my life out of fear that he would try to hurt me for the sake of his art. F that guy. On a night out, friend was sick and decided the best place was into his pint glass. After the deed was done, he proceeded to say, "Waste not, want not." Ugh, no. down the pint sit. I can't even read this. Still makes me queasy to think about it. Oh, gross. When I was in the army, we would frequent the local bars. Not surprising, however, there was a girl there paralyzed from the waist down, if I recall correctly. I do remember she was in a wheelchair, and she legit advertised giving it up for soldiers for love of her country. Wasn't my cup of tea. However, my friend really had no shame at all, and took her up on the offer. Apparently, she had a no anal rule, and according to PFC dipshit, he broke that rule, and she allegedly had no idea that he did. After he did this, he left her at the barracks on the 3rd floor. 3 months later, he melted a cup, pissed hot for all kinds of drugs, and went AWOL when confronted. They eventually found him living in the woods a few miles off post. About 10 years ago, I was AR'd. The first person I confided this to was my best friend. She told me it had happened to her, too, from the same person. It opened the floodgates for me to tell my story to more people and discover how many women in our friend group had similar stories about him. This dude was diabolical. He AR'd at least 5 girls from my friend group, and probably many more. The assault really messed with me. I had developed a raging depression issue with sex and security. I still have the night terrors to this day. My best friend knew very much how this event affected me, and I spoke to her often about how broken I was over it. She didn't want to share her experience too much after that, and I never told a soul about her encounter. It was her story to tell, not mine. Last year, she went to a concert, and when I asked who she went with, she dodged the question. I figured it was her douchebag ex that I couldn't stand, but I didn't push it. A few days later, her sister told me who she really went with. It was the guy who assaulted me. I guess he had an extra ticket, and it was her favorite band. She even brought him around more of her girlfriends at the hotel that stayed at, knowing his history. It took me a few weeks before I called her out on it. I was furious and deeply hurt. I asked her how she could bring a dangerous person around more of her girlfriends, knowing his history. She actively put them in danger having him around. I asked her how she could hang out with her own R's, let alone mine, and she said that she had lied, and he hadn't done that to her. What? She lied to me for 10 years about being R'd by the same man who R'd me. 10 effing years. Years ago, I watched a friend sell some kid crushed up sleeping pills in place for cocaine. He made me drive him to a town to meet this kid and sell the stuff. Needless to say, this kid's sister called screaming and crying. She was begging my friend to tell her what he gave her little brother. My friend laughed about it, and was completely cold and showed zero empathy through the whole situation. Later, found out the kid was perfectly fine. The sister was upset because he did a line in front of her and almost immediately passed out at the table. She said he was asleep for a good 12 hours after one line. That one line was probably equivalent to 3 to 4 sleeping pills straight to the head. My friend did this to buy heroin, which I had no idea he was doing. I lost a friend that night. I was better off for it with that and what I later learned about him.